Hi, everybody. Thanks for sitting down with us today. We appreciate it. We're with Movers and Shakers, Jared Preisler from Datamaster USA. Jared, how are you?
Tim, I am fantastic. Things are just, it's never been better to be an appraiser during this time. Lots of problems to solve and challenges out there, puzzles to put together, and I think most appraisers just really like solving that, solving the puzzle, figuring it all out. Um, there's lots of challenges, but we are doing great.
Well, that's wonderful. May I ask about your family?
Yes, the family's doing really good. We've had a unique opportunity with the COVID-19 challenges. I've got two kids in college that college is now virtual, so they were able to come home. One in med school and the other up in the Seattle, Washington area. And so it's been a little bit of a family reunion around our home, which was unexpected but much appreciated. My wife being able to have all of the family together has been very good. Everybody's healthy and safe, and just lots of home improvement projects getting finished up, and with the boys helping dad. So it's been good.
Oh, that sounds
Been
great.
very
Well,
good.
I'm glad everybody is safe, well, and happy.
Yeah.
Jared, before we get into this, now you're associated with Datamaster USA, and you're fairly active in podcasts and stuff like that through Datamaster. Go ahead and give us a little background on yourself before we get into the meat of the interview.
Sure, Tim. I have I've always been interested in real estate and in mostly the residential properties. When I was in college, I built up a little portfolio, about 60 rental properties. My dad was retired from the Navy, disabled, and one of the things he taught me was how to build an income stream when maybe you couldn't go out and work physically to get it. And so I started off young, managing properties, doing repairs, moved into where we owned a siding and remodeling company for quite a while, and then had an agent actually that I was buying property from approach me and say, "Hey, I'm going to become an appraiser. I think you'd be good at it. Why don't you go take the classes and pay me some money every time I sign your report?" And that's what kind of started me down the appraisal business. That was 25 years ago. And I was an independent fee appraiser up until solely doing fee work up until October 2016, which is when I joined the Datamaster team. One of my conditions for joining was I wanted to continue to appraise. So I have a fee business. We do a fair amount of fee work, as well as my role with Datamaster as the chief appraiser. 2014, I became certified to teach courses for the Appraisal Institute. And then in 2018, I became a USPAP instructor, AQB certified USPAP instructor as well.
We won't
And
hold that against you,
yeah, we
Jared.
won't hold that
No.
against. Yeah, my career path has really taken a different turn than what I thought it would in the beginning. But I'm very happy with the opportunities that have come, and the chances that I've had to really be involved in a profession that I love. Um, and so I've kind of walked both sides of the fence. I help from the technology standpoint and try and stay up on that, and then also use all the technology on a day-to-day basis in my business. So that's a little bit about me. I have 5 children. None of them are appraisers. They're all doing something different. My wife Lisa kind of manages the office work, but she is not an appraiser. Certainly knowledgeable enough to help out in that area, but we do a lot of traveling with the kids, and they're probably the center of our lives. So
And that's the way it should be. Family should be
yeah.
first always. Jared, let's talk about the fact that a data master exists to help out appraisers. Now, I know that recently you have added a service is the wrong word. You've added a component or an app or whatever the proper term is currently relative to analyzing the subject property's neighborhood. Now, let's start there. What is it? Why is it? What would? Who sat down and said, "Okay, we need to have a whole lot better neighborhood analysis in our appraisal software"? What was the genesis of this?
Well, in our classic product, back in 2000, I think it was 2009, 2010, when I was a user of DataMaster, the 1004 MC form came out. And DataMaster was one of the very first nationwide vendors to be able to populate or to figure out how to import the data into kind of the crazy format of that form. And quickly we became, one of the leading experts in how to populate that, developed our smart field technology, where we have 98 data tags that can be built into a paragraph. And as you change the data, those paragraphs change relative to the data that is inputted on the appraiser's behalf. And so as the 1004 MC was retired, which still most of my clients want to see that because they're used to that form, and they need the need for analyzing the market was never retired, but the form was retired, giving flexibility to appraisers. We saw a need for maybe expanding and shaking loose from the confinement of that form and applying our technology in a few other areas. And we worked on it for a little while. It's been in process maybe longer than you would like, which kind of seems to be the way with all software programs. They tend to sit in beta a little longer than anticipated, getting all the bugs worked out of them. And we took a lot of feedback from our customers as to what was needed, and then applied that to the new product or to the new feature. Our DataMaster Pro is our next gen program, our product, and this is only available in the DataMaster Pro program. And it has some fundamental principles. One is that the appraiser is always in control. Advisory Opinion 37, I think, clearly it puts the responsibility on the appraiser for understanding and being in control of the technology that they're using, the computer-assisted valuation tools. And we want to make sure that what we do is fully supportive of that, and there's no black box creating types of outputs that the appraiser's not fully in control of, and at the same time making it simple enough that you don't have to be a programmer or a statistician to understand and to use the product. So that was kind of our goal on the outset of when we looked at kind of the next version of the 1004 MC or the neighborhood analysis, market analysis process.
Now, you mentioned that you got feedback from boots on the ground appraisers. How did DataMaster determine what markers needed to be part of the neighborhood analysis software?
It was a little, we sat down and kind of built a little structure ourselves. We have several appraisers on staff and a couple, with a lot of experience, and we said, okay, we're going to start with this framework, and then let's expand out and see how close that happens to be. We had initially thought, maybe an 18-month view would be enough for looking at a trend, and got a lot of feedback that we really need 2 years. So our standard graphs are now all built on 2-year graphs if the data is there. Some of those type of inputs. In some areas of the country, GLA is king. The size of the property is very important. And in other parts, it doesn't matter so much, but maybe bathrooms and bedroom count are more important. Lot size. And so we took our experience with we interact with about 75 MLSs on a back end relationship where we access their data on the back end. It represents about 85% of the MLS data in the country. And with our experience in which fields we could get merged with public records, what we were able to narrow down about 10 fields that represent a good chunk of what happens in each of the markets. And so using that user input, the appraiser's input, was really critical in some of the outputs. And frankly, Tim, this has been out and available now for about 3 weeks, and we're getting more and more feedback as those other than just our focus group start participating with it and using it.
What is that feedback telling you?
Number one, there's been some aha moments for appraisers where they go, oh, I didn't think my market was doing that, or I didn't realize the relationship between this sub-market within this bigger market. I'd never had a tool where I could get bifurcated markets, or you've got, most MLSs are not designed for an appraiser. They're designed for a real estate agent to market and to promote a property, a listing. And so a lot of the MLSs have some very basic graphs and exporting tools. And a lot of the feedback's been, wow, I didn't know that was in my MLS. I didn't know that we could get that kind of data. We can tell you when the status changed of a particular listing, what its days on markets have been, cumulative days on market, connective days on market between different listings, or simultaneous listings. And so the feedback's been very good. There have been some questions about our graphing. We frankly, I think we're going to do a little bit of refining there. We've had a little bit of feedback. Can we get a little bit more granular in some of the features that we show differences in? That we'll talk about maybe in our next phase, but we're gathering all of that feedback now, and that'll go into phase 2 and 3 that'll come out as well. So overall, it's been very positive.
Okay. Excuse me for interrupting you. Jared, you talked about taking the MLS, which was never designed for appraisers, and without basically changing the design, making it a lot more open, a lot more explanatory, a lot more revelatory to appraisers. Do you feel that that is something that the typical boots on the ground appraiser is going to be able to take advantage of, or is the MLS just too broker oriented for appraisers to worry about?
Oh, I definitely think the appraiser can take advantage of it. There's a few little things you've got to change from a mindset standpoint. For example, most appraisers, when they look and they export data out of their MLS, they're not going to be inclined to get the withdrawn or the canceled or the I guess just withdrawn, canceled listing, because they don't know what to do with that. What do I do with a listing that canceled 6 months ago when I'm trying to do an 18-month trend or show a graph with 24 months in it? Well, the MLS, with our access, if you give us all of the statuses within your defined neighborhood. So let's say you use most MLSs have a mapping tool where you can draw around a particular neighborhood. And then you say, I want all of the 1940 to 1960 ranch style 3-bedroom, 2-bath. You know, it might give you 100 listings if you get all your statuses. We can take those statuses and tell you that withdrawn listing was an active listing 11 months ago, and then 10 months ago it was under contract, and 9 months ago it was then withdrawn. And we can see its days on market through that time period, where with just straight MLS mapping, you don't see that. If it's canceled, most MLSs, it's forgotten. It doesn't, but it was the big piece of the puzzle 9 months ago. And to recreate that in an Excel spreadsheet or in another tool is very, very tough to do. You know, multiple exports out of your MLS, and most appraisers are not going to go to that time, the time that it takes to do that. Where in our tool, I can show you exactly what the status was at whatever point in time. And even if we were doing something forensic, where you want to ask me, you know, what was the market doing 24 months ago? Go 24 months back. Will give me the data that was there. It's all either going to be sold or expired or withdrawn, but give me those and I'll tell you how many active listings were on the market 24 months ago. But your MLS won't be able to do that. And it's just a matter of a mindset saying, give me all the data. Don't you know, eliminate the off-market listings. Give it all to me and let DataMaster go in the back end and figure out what that status was at that time. We're really good at that.
Okay, so you've got the capacity to go in and do a much deeper, in other words, a forensic analysis that the MLS data, the MLS just can't do because computers are not set up that way, correct?
Right. Okay. It's not set to do that. We have contractual agreements with the MLS to give us that back end access, and then we tell them which fields we need. So all I need is the MLS number, and we get all the history. Sometimes it's 900 data points on that one listing that then we can analyze. But for the market, we're really only looking at maybe a handful, a dozen of different data points, but the most critical ones are when the status changes occurred. When was it on the market? When was it off the market? Back on the market? Those status changes. And I'll have appraisers that will tell me, and we did a lot of this in our classic product. It just wasn't as revealed because the constraint of the 1004 MC. But they'll say, I remember a year ago what the market was like, but I couldn't prove it. And now you're giving me a tool that I can actually show what was happening a year ago. I remembered that, but I would have had to dig through a bunch of old files to even try to find it. And now it's all accessible.
Jared, according to the Fannie Mae Selling Guide, there are about 36 questions the appraiser has to answer about any particular neighborhood. Now, how does DataMaster software, how does its ability to go granular help the appraiser to analyze, for example, the architecture in the subject's neighborhood?
You know, that's when Tim, when I stumbled across your essay, I'll call it an essay on these 36 questions, I had never counted how many questions.
Shows you how little I have to do, right?
and I was really surprised at some, you know, number one, I want to compliment you. Just such a fantastic tool that you've put together for the appraiser. I keep a copy of it on my desk. I printed it out and look at it. You know, there's a great obligation that the appraiser has in helping Fannie and Freddie determine risk. And one of the things that, you know, you mentioned the architecture, you know, how that might play in. As the appraiser, we're the ones that are supposed to be able to tell our client what features are important within that particular market. And what DataMaster allows you to do is now compare two different data sets. So let's say that I had a ranch style home in one particular area, and in that whole marketplace, there's also a bunch of two-stories or colonials or whatever other style it might happen to be. I can do an export out of my MLS of just the ranch style properties, and then I can say, give me all of the properties or give me just another set. And I can side by side look at how they've appreciated, what their price per square foot change was, even what's their size difference. Are they built on different size lots? What's the comparison between those two markets? I just did one this morning in a little town in Utah. I work in the northern Utah area in a little town called Brigham City. Brigham City is a classical town that kind of started in with maybe 4 or 5 blocks right in the middle, and then just continued to grow over time. And it has about a 150-year growth period that's been pretty steady as the community has expanded. So all the newer properties are on the outside of the town, and all the older properties are on the inside. And I'm doing a 1960 ranch or rambler style home with a single car carport, 1,000 up, 1,000 down. And I wanted to see, has it appreciated at the same rate over the last 12 months or the last 18 months as the whole Brigham City market? And it was very simple. I did 2 searches in my MLS. I imported the information into Datamaster, and I had graphs, 28 different graphs side by side of all of the different components: days on market, price per square foot. I could see everything. And actually my market, my sub-market, appreciated at a 12.5% rate over the 12 months, where the market as a whole only appreciated 9%, 9.5%. And that's because my home is on the lower end of the market. The affordability getting into this home is much more affordable in this particular market. Well, that's something I think important to tell my lender. I think it's something important to tell my client, how this property fits into the community, fits into everybody else going to the same schools, working at the same jobs, all of those different components that are outlined in Fannie Mae selling guide. They want us to tell them about the community, about the neighborhood as defined, where are the competing properties coming from, and how does the subject property fit within that, or the subject's market, more specific, fit within that market. It was an extra search in the MLS, but really pretty painless on the appraiser end to get a great comparison.
It was an extra search, but it didn't take all that much more time, right?
No, not what it would have. If I didn't have Datamaster, I probably would have spent an hour, 60 minutes at least. And I'm pretty good at Excel. I teach a couple of Excel classes for appraisers. I can make pivot tables and charts and those kind of things. In what took me less than probably 4 or 5 minutes, would have normally, without Datamaster, taken probably an hour.
So the data were available to anybody who wanted to go get them, but because of the what is built into the software, you were able to manipulate, you were able to tweak those data a lot faster and learn what they said, correct?
Correct. Yeah. It was very easy to see, to be able to see also some outliers. This particular area gets geocoded. It's covered by rural properties, and often the rural properties will get geocoded into the middle of town because it doesn't know where to stick them, my MLS. And I could quickly see the property that was 6 acres farmland, 4 miles west of town, that really didn't belong in my data set. I simply highlighted that in our detail sheet, deleted it out. Everything was recalculated instantly. And I could not do that in my MLS. There's no mechanism in my MLS to allow me to do that, because it's not designed for that.
So even though you're kind of an Excel guru, you could not have downloaded that simply to Excel and then just deleted it, uh, but rather by being able to run it through the software, it handled all of that for you. Now, in handling it, all of that for you, did it indicate to you, um, for example, appraisers are accused of not answering the why question. Appraisers are pretty good at what happened. Appraisers are pretty good at when it happened, but they're not very good at why it happened. How does Data Master excel over simply? Oh, that's a terrible pun. How does Data Master excel over simple Excel and over MLS to answer those questions?
I think one of the reasons, Tim, that we're not so good at the why is it's hard for us to see. Um, and and what I think Data Master can do is uh, is expose some of that in a way that's a little bit easier for us to understand. Um, Especially when it comes to things like our smart field technology, we can show you that the percentage of properties with concessions is declining or increasing, what the amount of the concessions are over the period of time and what they're changing. Okay, that now exposes that data, and now you can answer the why. Well, um, concessions are declining because dot dot dot. There's less inventory, and sellers don't have to make concessions to attract buyers. The buyers are there. Or did interest rates decrease enough that now I can qualify without buying down an interest rate, and so I didn't need the concession from that uh, from that transaction. It would be very, very difficult to get some of those whys. We think about it, and as we talk about it, you and I together, it makes sense, but you're sitting alone in your office. Most appraisers, I think, are working in kind of a bubble, or within their own environment, without a lot of interaction from other appraisers. And so to me, this helps me to understand and say, oh wow, there's an anomaly. Let me dig in and see what that difference is, what happened. And I'm not spending all my time trying to cleanse data and create graphs and charts. That part, mechanical part's already done. I can spend time asking that why question and then figuring out the answer to it. I had one the other day that was air conditioning. Utah's very hot right now, and I'm doing a proper.
You don't mean the market, you mean the weather.
Well, both actually, but the weather, yeah. Try to sell a property in Utah right now without air conditioning, and I was working on one that the air conditioner's not functioning. It's FHA. I required, it was in the contract that it needed to work, and they came back to me and said, well, what would the difference be if we just took it out and said there's no air conditioning in the home, so we can close? And it was very easy for me to go back and say, well, homes with no AC sell for this, and homes with AC sell for this. And I was surprised at the difference, frankly. Um, all my comps had AC because the subject had AC. But those kind of things, the tools are just, it's just there for you to do, to use. It's going to take a little bit of a learning curve, but we're here to help with that. But not so much where you have to have a degree in Microsoft Excel or in database management or in statistics to be able to understand it. It's actually fairly intuitive.
Now, you talked about appraisers tending to act alone. And we are. I mean, we're told that we have to form our value opinion, not somebody else's. And we have to do the research pretty much ourselves without using a lot of help from other people. So we know what the data actually say and how to interpret the data. So let's take a look at another issue of the appraiser is working on his or her own and doing the best he or she can, and having children and theoretically a social life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How is what you've got, how is what you do going to help an appraiser increase his or her due diligence, and is going to decrease that appraiser's, oh, how shall we say this positively, opportunity to appear before the state appraisal board, an opportunity we probably don't want?
Tim, great question. A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to talk to a few regulators, not as the subject of their regulation, but
Good.
in
Put that in, make that clear. Make that clear, Jared. Yes.
but we were visiting and asked what's really the challenge out there that regulators are seeing. I've got a couple of really good friends that are members of ARRO and that attend the conferences. And as we travel around at different events, I'm able to talk to them. And I always ask them, what's the big problems that you're seeing across the country with appraisers, and what gets them in trouble, basically? And over and over and over, the answer is work file compliance. The regulators, they don't regulate our opinion of value. If somebody puts your report in and says, oh, you said the market was increasing at 17%, and I really think it was increasing at 50%, and you undervalued my property. The regulators aren't going to get into that. What they want to see is your work file. How did you support your opinions, and is that contained within the work file? And the challenge that we have today is the digital nature of that work file. I go online, if I go on my MLS and I do a bunch of searches and I kind of write a few things on my folder of my file, and then I close down my computer, the expectation is that tomorrow I'm going to be able to open that and get to that data again. But the reality is that's gone. And that moment in time cannot be created again. What Datamaster does is you do that export, give it to us, work through the process and the problems within Datamaster. When you hit send and send that file to your form vendor, we archive it and snapshot it. Automatically, it's saved within your work file. So you come back a year from now, 3 months from now, whenever it happens to be that somebody's asking you about it, and they say, how many active listings were there at that time? Oh, I can open that file and tell you exactly what it was. There's not an additional step that's required to get that information into your work file. We create your digital work file for you. At least if you give us the information, we're going to create it for you and have a place where you can go back to. And not having to, there's a lot of times you send the report off, and per USPAP, your work file is supposed to be completely complete at that time. You can't add to it 3 weeks later. And for us, we help facilitate that work file compliance. For me, that's become a big part of it. Is there might be a few little things I've got to change in how my workflow goes to be able to utilize this technology. And I want to learn how I can make that change to be able to take advantage of this. And that's probably the biggest thing advantage I think in using Datamaster is that work file, archiving that work file and taking a snapshot of what you saw on the day you did the report, and not trying to recreate it on the web 6 months, 9 months, 12 months later.
Jared, as we get ready to wrap this up, you mentioned earlier the concept of risk. And it's up to appraisers in many instances to help the lender, help the client understand risk. So let's talk, as we get to the end, let's talk about this. How does what you've got, how does what you provide help the appraiser to analyze the risk in a neighborhood and then communicate that analysis to the client?
So we have some great tools where you can show side by side. I think one of the best ways to show risk is to provide a comparison here's my subject property and my subject market. How does it fit into the bigger picture? How does it fit into that overall neighborhood? Am I the outlier? Am I the over improvement? Am I the under improvement? Then I can draw some conclusions. And a lot of our graphs and charts will side by side show that. So for example, days on market is a good indication of risk. Let's say we're not in a crazy market, but we're in a normal market whenever that happens, or in the past maybe it happened. And typical days on market, you say your exposure time is 30 days, and your submarket is showing a 90-day days on market. Well, what's the risk then to my client? Is that something that they should be able to see? And if I've got a chart and a graph that shows exactly and can demonstrate that, now I have the opportunity to create a little bit of narrative with it and say these properties, because of ... have a greater, or on the market more than typical, or more than expected. And so those are the kinds of things I think that this can do. And I certainly don't know all of the different markets across the country, but we're always taking suggestions. If there's something that we overlooked or we missed, and an appraiser says, in my market, this indicator really really would show a higher propensity for risk or something, is there any way to be able to get that? We're very open to looking at that and saying how can we display that? Is that data that we can get, and can we present it in a way that would be meaningful, and then you could do some commentary around. I think a lot of it is telling the story and then having the support for the story that you told, and we do a very good job at that.
So Datamaster helps the appraiser tell the story to the client of what is going on in the neighborhood, correct?
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
Okay, it's time to engage in little shameless commerce, Jared. If
Okay.
someone wants to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
The easiest way, we're all on the web, I think, is just DatamasterUSA.com, and don't forget the USA before the .com. You can find us there. There's all of our contact numbers. We're running specials, and folks can take advantage of those. They can get to me that way as well.
So they can contact you through the website, correct?
Correct.
Okay, good. All right, now it's my turn to engage in a little bit of shameless commerce. We've been with Jared Preisler of DatamasterUSA. Jared is a personal friend, is someone who is there to help appraisers, help boots on the ground appraisers be better appraisers. If I can help you in any way, please contact me. I'm Tim Andersen, the Appraiser's Advocate. My email address is tim@theappraisersadvocate.com. My website is theappraisersadvocate.com, and go to /podcasts if you'd like to hear this and other podcasts. And by the way, please go down to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen and click that subscribe button. It helps put grandchildren through college. Thank you. Rick was going to join us, but I guess he didn't. So, Jared, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's always good to see you. My best to your family. I'm glad that your kids are home and taking advantage of that. And I look forward to the next time we can all get together, and other than digitally and visually.
Yes, it'll be good to see you in person again, Tim. Thank you very much.
Tim, this is Rick. I just joined in probably 10 minutes ago, so I listened, but I didn't interrupt. And so greetings to you, my friend. Thank you very much.
Rick, thank you. You can come on camera for a second if you want to. That's perfectly okay. Oh, there you go. Okay, there you go. There's Rick. All right. Yeah, we want to get the head honcho in here too. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. So again, get in touch with DatamasterUSA.com. Ask for Rick. Ask for Jared. They are going to help you out. If you have any questions, get in touch with me. I appreciate it very much. And gentlemen, thank you. We're clear.
Thank you, Tim.